So like I said, that bird may be innocent. It was a bit of a false alarm. The media got very excited, wondering if it was a spy bird sent all the way from China. But the issue of Chinese surveillance is very, very real. I want to show you a map of the Indian Ocean. You just saw it in my story right there, but I want to call attention to it. This map's, I've borrowed all these details from Damien Simon, who's one of the finest imagery analysts out there. And there are at least 5 research vessels from China operating right now in the Indian Ocean region. Let's just show our viewers all of them. The Lanhai 201 is the 5th one that's just come in. The Dayang Yi Ahau, all operating very close to the Andamans near Sri Lanka and the Arabian Sea. Now, there's nothing openly wrong about this. These are international waters. These are very busy sea lanes of trade and communication. But there is, of course, a lot of surveillance also going on. That is the Indian system's understanding of where things are at. So here we have a day when a seabird with a Chinese GPS chip caused a bit of local panic and some alarm over Chinese surveillance. Turned out to be a bit of a false alarm, but it's made everyone sit up and talk about the threat of Chinese surveillance in this country. Joining us live now, Commodore Ranjit B Rai, former Director of Naval Intelligence and Director of Naval Operations. Einar Tangen is Global and China Strategist and a Senior Fellow with the Center for International Government Innovation. And Jiten Jain is Director at Voyager Infosec. He's one of India's most well-regarded cyber security experts. Jiten, I'll kick it off with you. The seabird, like I said, was a bit of a trigger. Everyone started talking about it. I was skeptical right at the start because, being someone who has been into avian conservation in the past, I know how this works. But it got the right kind of conversation going, Jiten.
No, if you look at the onset, Shiv, a bird with a GPS tracking device and then Chinese email addresses, that too of a government institute of Chinese Academy of Sciences, found in a strategic naval base, it makes a perfect recipe of a spy theory or which would have been at play. But if you carefully look at the evidence, if somebody has intentionally put out the email ID of a government research institute, put a tag, and usually it is a routine practice to study the migratory patterns, feeding stopovers, and the migratory route of birds. So I don't think that we need to get much more into it. If there was any conspiracy or if there was any spying angle, this email ID would not have been there on the nameplate itself. You would have seen more like these Pakistani pigeons which cross over with some hidden messages and trained pigeons.
Yeah.
So this is certainly not that. This is largely to see the migratory patterns of birds. However, I think since China is involved, we have had incidents of Chinese espionage going on in cyberspace. We have seen hydroponic surveys been carried out to map our submarine seabeds. It's good to be cautious. It's good to be alarmed. It's good to have these conversations. But let me tell you, Shiv, a bird fitted with a GPS tracker might look completely harmless, look like a completely, data collection exercise for a, migration route study. But if you were to see in the future, there are many countries and where China is leading, there are these bio-inspired drones where dead birds are fitted with motors and the tracking devices. So suppose if there was, 5 years from now, if China was to send a bio-inspired drone with dead bird with motors and everything with surveillance equipment, first thing you would need is to mix in the crowd. You would need to mix that bird in the routine, the route these birds follow, and then carry out surveillance. You can't just have a random bird flying with a drone. So I think it is very, very important to get to the bottom of it, not get alarmed, not get into any conspiracy theories, but it is very, very important to study the entire GPS data, see how long the data has been collected. And I'm told that it has gone for, I think, around 10,000 kilometers right from Antarctic. So it would have definitely flown for months and months. So it is very important to know when the data collection started, what was the initial point of collection, and then probably is this the only incident? So, it is very important to keep the track of data because it is not a threat today, but
there's no question. Forensically and otherwise, it needs to be gone into in very great detail. No chances can be taken with something like this.
As long as it is a bird, it is harmless.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Tangen, your view on this, are you surprised that this seemingly innocent seabird with a GPS tracker that's been traced back to China has created something of a flutter here? Given how things are between the two countries? How do you see this?
Well, the hysteria reflects the fact that there's very little trust between China and India, and that's a shame. Right now, we were talking before about Bangladesh, Nepal, places like this. It was the United States, actually, that was involved in all of those regime change operations. They're also involved, interfering in Indian elections. They've made false claims about the peace process between India and Pakistan. In addition to that, there's been the economic warfare of 50%. The U.S., 98% of all of the internet traffic goes through a stone's throw in West Virginia from the CIA headquarters. Is spying going on? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this is just hysterical. The idea that you're going to try to get some bird to fly 10,000 miles over the Arctic and then drop on a beach in India. Remember, it has no ability to report back. So if this was an information gathering information, whoever was mounting it should be taken out and told that they're no longer needed.
It was largely the media. To be fair, it wasn't any of the agencies. Things are being looked into, but it was my colleagues on other networks that really sort of got very excited about this story. But Abhijit,
it's bird-brained.
It's triggered the right instincts in many ways, and there are those who will say that it's not so outlandish to believe that asymmetric instruments of surveillance could be there. I mean, the facts of what Mr. Tangen say are true. There's no way to report back in this particular case, but was it wrong for sections of the country to sort of sit up and wonder what this was all about, especially since it was a few kilometers away from India's biggest naval base? Abhijit?
Well, I don't think so.
In the level of security education in this country, I think not. However, it's very interesting, the visuals. These are not the normal tags you put on a bird. I've actually tagged birds at Einar Tangen Bird Sanctuary in Tamil Nadu. These are way too big for academic studies of bird migrations and things like that. This is clearly some other tool. Is it China? Well, we don't know. The point is the Chinese do very strange things which we never understand. We still, after 70 years of being, their neighbor, still don't get some of their foreign policy calculus and their actions. If you remember America last year or earlier this year, I forget when, there was a scare about all these balloons coming across the Pacific Ocean and flying all over America and things like that. Again, we don't know what happens in the Chinese mind. I think they themselves go to a great extent to mystify what they say. They can never say things directly. They can never say Shiv Aroor, great program. They have to, wrap it into into an Easter egg, into a emu egg, into an ostrich egg, into an elephant's egg, and then present it to you. And you're meant to figure out what you want. The issue isn't a trust deficit. It's an issue of a lack of communication with China. China never communicates clearly. They talk in puzzles and riddles and webs and things like that. We never understand their cost-benefit analysis. That's it. Now, that being the case, what else do you expect from the Indian public? I think it's perfectly reasonable, just like the scare you saw in America because of those balloons. A scare here is perfectly reasonable. Now, no security analyst believes this has any serious value at all, irrespective of what device has been put on that poor bird. I think it's really bird abuse. That heavier device should have never been put on the bird.
Okay.
But, well, look, I mean, from security terms, no. But from a social perspective, yes, totally reasonable.
Okay, clear answer there. Mr. Tangen, you want to respond to that? Abhijit suggests that it's not so much about the trust deficit, but, the fact that, China is fairly opaque, speaks in puzzles, isn't very open. And remember, we're talking at a time when India and China are actually, trying to improve things between each other.
I don't think the bird was part of that. I'm still struggling to understand an elephant egg. If my colleague believes that elephants are hatched, I find that a little bit odd. I mean, the fact is that, this is what I meant.
Lost in translation.
Maybe. In any event, there is a tremendous amount of distrust on both sides. This leads to the hysteria, the very fact that we're having this conversation about a bird. And then that is supposedly triggering all of these fantasies that somehow dead birds are going to be mounted with motors or something. It doesn't even make sense. You know, on September 25th, there was a worldwide tracking of 1.2 billion birds. They used various means to do it. In terms of this bird, I think my colleague was referring to was a solar tracker to try to keep the battery going as long as possible. Obviously, given that it flew 10,000 kilometers, I don't think that it was a horrible impediment to the bird itself. And obviously, whatever scientific research they're trying to do. But let me answer the last question, this idea that somehow China is opaque and doesn't speak properly. This goes to a cultural mismatch between India and China. I mean, what you're saying about China is exactly what China says about India. And I think both sides just have a different way of approaching things. But it shouldn't be an impediment to two countries that have so much shared history and culture. I think there are ways around it, and I hope that in the future we can find them instead of engaging in these kind of nonsensical communications about what could happen with dead birds.
That is definitely the hope, even though the military standoff between the two countries continues to be the largest military standoff currently existing in the world. But I just want to draw our viewers' attention
that would be Ukraine.
to another aspect of it, which is cybersecurity. And I want to just show our viewers some data based on a recent report about cloud espionage that has rung some alarm bells in India's power centers. India's digitization shift to cloud-based platforms has happened at an exponentially fast rate in the last few days. And I've just noticed a report about Warp Panda, which is a China-linked cyber espionage outfit that's been active since 2022, that is now reported to have infiltrated cloud environments, running VMware technology. And these are cloud platforms that are used massively by Indian government agencies, large private sector companies as well. And cybersecurity experts say that malware of this kind linked to China, could access multiple virtual servers, steal sensitive data, and cause economic and strategic damage. So this is very, very real. Jiten, I want to bring you in on this because there are all these various aspects of surveillance, cyber attacks that might actually take place. I've shown you the naval aspect of it. I'll go to Commodore Rai in just a bit. But Jiten, you want to throw some light on this, Warp Panda and others? What is your assessment of that?
No, before I come to Warp Panda, I would like to respond to Ran when he said that it is hilarious that people are thinking that there will be motors on the dead birds. I think I'll recommend strongly to him that he should go to these Chinese tech conferences where people are claiming about the advances in Chinese neurotech, where you're embedding chips in the humans like Neuralink, what Elon is doing, and installing chips in the birds. So this is not imagination. These are the experiments of today where China has been highly successful, and we are just only looking at the threat gravitas for tomorrow. You are experimenting to build something, right? You're not doing it out of fun and just burning your money.
Yeah.
So I'm sure when you do such experiments, people are bound to get alarmed. People are bound to think the future threats from emanating from China. Now, coming to the cloud, I think there was an interesting conversation around 5 years back when there was a tender for procuring servers for UIDI or GEM. And I think one of the bidders, which was L1, was a big American company I would not name here. And they were disqualified or they were not given a tender because their entire supply chain was coming from China. And there were reports that, those entire supply lines have been infected by Chinese. They were, embedded malwares in the hardware chips they were procuring. So what we have seen, this pager blast with Hezbollah, what Israeli did, it came out in open because Israeli wanted to, spread the threat perception in Hezbollah cadre.
Yeah.
But what Chinese would have been doing in the supply chain infection probably will only get to know 20 years from now. So the threat is very real. That is why companies across the world are shifting supply chains from China. No sensitive products in telecom today are built in China. So if every country in the world, every democracy in the world is banning Chinese gadgetry and hardware in the telecom networks, and I'm sure we are not living in a fool's paradise to believe that these are all conspiracies and Chinese are running a great technology innovation campaign.
No, this is the point, that India is not alone in having these views about China, whether it is trust, whether it is about not getting the full picture when dealing with China. All of these reflect really that. Commodore Rai, sorry to come to you so late. There was a bit of an audio issue, but we just showed our viewers, whether it is this little Seagull that has triggered some outsized panic, to the India's cloud systems being infiltrated possibly, or the threat of that happening, to the military intelligence, to what's happening in the Indian Ocean region. How do you see that? Because we do know that the Navy is dealing with this in a real way right now. There are 5 survey ships. There's a large-scale mapping of the Indian Ocean seabed that's taking place. There are listening posts all over the Indian Ocean. You've been Director of Naval Intelligence. How big is this?
Well, as all your speakers have told you, that actually GPS bird is a scientific experiment which many countries carried out. And China is the greatest researcher today in the world. So what you should not apologize about. I'm very glad you brought this program up because your viewers will understand. So clinically, before I go to the mapping of the seas, you must know that today tracking is common. Every mobile phone is tracking. So there's nothing new about this technology. Now to put it on a bird, a researcher has put it on the bird and actually give you an email which points to China. Therefore, we must look at it. But because it has come to INS Kadamba, Karwar is going to be one of the largest bases in the east. It's going to be as large as Hainan in China. And minute the word China comes up on a bird or on a tracker, naturally the intelligence agencies have to look up because the police reported it to Navy. Kadamba has a naval armament depot. There's a lot of ammunition, missiles all over the place. It is well guarded. So I'm very happy that even though we are convinced that this was possibly a scientific experiment, look, if the Chinese or any country wants to know anything about the world, there is this satellite, and Google Earth will actually tell you much more about Kadamba than any common man. So as an intelligence man, I would go to Google Earth, I'll look at satellites, and I'm sure NTRO is doing that. But now you come to another new point while we're discussing this bird. We must look at it clinically. And since you brought it up, today, the future of the world is going to look to the seas for minerals, for food, for edibles, and for actually desalinated water. Therefore, you have quite rightly put, the survey ships are on duty. The Indian Navy is mapping the underground. So Chinese are very interested in the Indian Ocean. And they are mapping the water. So through your actually a bird with a tracker, you have told your viewers how important it is. And also, we have a fusion center in Delhi where there are 12 foreign officers. And the minute this bird would have been reported to the center, which is actually a part of intelligence, they would have reported back to their countries. And like you are doing an analysis there, neighboring countries and foreign countries would be doing it. And because of the word China, well, it takes prominence. We have problems with China, and China is the greatest researcher today, spending money. Therefore, I don't see anything wrong with some researchers looking at bird tracking, climate tracking, tracking of birds, doing this experiment.
This is, I'm glad that I was able to use this particular story that we don't really understand much about to expand into something that we should all be talking about. And I thank Abhijit, Mr. Tangen, and Commodore Rai for being with me tonight on India Matters. This was useful. I hope our viewers find this useful as well. We talk a lot about Pakistan. We don't talk enough about Chinese surveillance. It's something that you should be aware about. China is a powerful country. They dominate in many ways in the hardware and software space. The devices that you use could very well be made in China. Many of the apps you use are Chinese in origin, even though we've banned many of them. So it's something to keep on your mind as you look at this little bird. And we, of course, wish that this little bird is taken care of and is healthy very, very soon.